Hello and welcome to this 4IT Future Elite session, Building Your Career in Delivery. Here's what you need to know. Our speakers today are two leaders in tech delivery, Peter Griffiths and Rebecca Fox. Peter, an experienced cloud and digital transformation leader, will chart the unknown path for a career in technology and program delivery, while Rebecca, a digital and tech leader and occasional blogger, will navigate grey skies and rainbows. And give some pretty robust advice for aspiring tech leaders in our audience. Each presentation will last around 20 minutes, leaving plenty of time for questions. Please put anything you want to ask onto the chat box in your GoToWebinar toolbar, and we'll deal with as many questions as we can before we close at 7 o'clock. So I will hand over the screen now and welcome our first speaker, Peter Griffiths.
Thank you, John. Okay, have I got the screen? And I'm hoping that you can all see the presentation there. So hi everybody, I'm Pete Griffiths. Thanks for taking the time to listen in today. Today I'm going to talk to you about my story and my journey in technology, mainly focusing on project and program delivery roles. I'll share some of the career steps that I've taken, the roles that I've worked in and the companies I've worked with. I'm hoping that this will give you some insight into my journey, the skills that I've developed and the learnings that I've developed along the way. I'll talk a bit about my background, my interests, my early career, and then I'll move the focus onto my current employer, Morrison's, and a recent key program delivery that I've led there. Hopefully this will be useful in your own journey. I hope you find it interesting, and please do get involved and ask as many questions as you like later. So to start with, I thought it'd be useful to give you a little bit of background about myself and my interests that I have outside of work. I'm originally from Scotland. I now live in Yorkshire with my girlfriend. I have a 10-year-old son and a dog called Beans, who is also fascinated by technology. I'll tell you a little bit more about him later. But you know, these three really keep me busy when I'm not at work, and you'll often find us on some adventure somewhere filling the time when we're not working or on lockdown. I also absolutely love to travel. I've been all over the world. I love seeing new countries. I love experiencing different cultures. When I'm abroad, my favourite place is Bali. And when the restrictions are over, I think you'll catch me there on the beach enjoying a nice cold drink. So a little bit about my early career then, I suppose. First of all, I'll tell you a little bit. I'll tell you a little secret. So when I was a wee laddie growing up in the east of Scotland, I never ever thought I would be a program manager or even knew what one of those was. And I think that's probably one of the first bits of advice that I could give anybody who are interested in developing their careers. That it's actually okay not to know things, and it's actually okay not to know where your path may take you. That's the great thing about taking on a new role, learning a new skill, or trying something new for the first time. I grew up in a town just outside Edinburgh, and I was pretty average at school. I had some decent grades, was an all-rounder, but never really excelled in any subjects. So I went to university, enrolled in an engineering with management course. But before I could even get through the first year, I booked some flights in a backpack and headed off for a working summer in Greece. This working summer turned into 6 years travelling through Greece, New Zealand and Australia. And really that's where I developed the love for, and the bug, you know, the love for travelling. On reflection, this left me with a few revelations really. One, I had failed at university. Wow, what that could be perceived as being a really bad thing. But two, not really, because I had learned more about myself, learned something that wasn't for me, and I had learned it really quickly. And failing and learning quickly still happens every day, or it still happens really often in my life today. And it's all about failing, learning, moving on, taking that as an experience. And, you know, number three of that revelation, I'd really learned and opened up my experience to the amazing adventure of travel, something that I really loved through my life, and that cultural piece about meeting new people, building new teams, building new skills, building new teams, and that's really that trait's seen me through as well. So following the years of travel, my first professional career was in IT recruitment. This gave me an insight into the industry that I knew I wanted to be part of, and I knew that I could have an impact in. But this didn't happen overnight. I worked in IT recruitment for over 4 years, and this really gave me an amazing opportunity to grow my personal network and also speak to thousands of IT professionals. I always ask questions. I always ask questions to try and understand their role, how they played their part in the wider tech department, and how they developed their skills. Working in recruitment gave me the chance to work with Morrisons supermarkets. I got the chance to work in an IT recruitment campaign and recruit 100 resources in a period of 6 months. I led this process, and it gave me an amazing opportunity to work on site with Morrisons and really learn so much more about the business. Morrisons is an amazing place to work. The size and the scale of the company makes it a really exciting and challenging place to work. For those who don't know, Morrisons employs over 120,000 colleagues, serves over 12 million customers a week through 500 stores, delivery and online channels. It's the second largest food manufacturer in the UK, and it also has a huge supply and logistics network. Within technology, these are the technology teams I'm hoping that you can see on the presentation at the moment. So within technology, there's many roles and across the department. These break down into sort of customer and colleague experience and also in core operations. Colleagues in these teams work in a vast amount of technologies, so it's really a great place to be able to grow and harness and develop a career. If you've not checked out Morrisons as a place to work, I would suggest having a look at the careers website. There's lots going on there and really moving forward into digitalisation of the organisation. So throughout the IT campaign that I led and that I had the chance to work on, I had the chance to work with all the teams and learn so much about how the department ran. I was also able to build really good and lasting relationships with the tech leadership team at the time, and that is how I was able to transition into the role of project manager or technology project manager in an IT function. You know, no background in technology apart from self-taught and learning and listening and really reading up on things. So it's a different sort of move into there. I had managed many projects that were business-led previously, and really moving into technology, I was able to refine and improve my delivery skills, getting the opportunity to work on bigger and more complex projects to deliver successful outcomes to the business. I got to manage projects including an applicant tracking system, a finance and an integration project that allowed the organisation to take advantage of supply chain finance, which was an integration between Oracle eBusiness and some banking platforms. I was also involved in a range of HR and PeopleSoft upgrades and future enhancements all around colleague experience and colleague domain. And I was involved in a multi-million-pound outsourcing programme, which gave me some key experience working with more third parties, but transitioning services to third parties. So again, quite a varied sort of range of projects there. The majority of these projects were waterfall deliveries at the time. So I also used that opportunity to upskill within Prince 2 as a formal qualification, really developing up against making sure I had a formal qualification to back up all the on-the-job training that I was on learning that I was doing. And I would recommend, you know, no matter how busy you are, find the time to develop or learn a new skill. Do a course, read up, attend a lunch and learn, take the opportunity. After that initial period of project delivery, I got the opportunity to work in supply chain. So creating new store mobile applications that were critical in sales-based ordering for the organisation. This was a complete rewrite of many legacy applications that integrated with the backbone of supply chain and into retail stores. This was the first opportunity at the time where I got to work in a more agile environment. I was running 3 agile development teams, some with Scrum, some with Kanban approaches, and it was also a great experience to build relationships by working closer with the business SMEs. And this taught me how important it is to experience the technology that you deliver from the customer and the colleague perspective. This was really fast-paced. It was a critical delivery to transform the organisation, and it was adding loads of new digital journeys to colleagues and working with the latest cloud technologies. I did around 4.5 years of project manager roles at Morrisons, and the way that I approached it, I always put myself forward for the difficult project, the challenging project, the project that had difficult stakeholders, the ones that had the projects that were failing or red. And I always felt that that was the best way for me to be able to learn. And I also loved the challenge of being able to turn something around in that instance. From there, and through our recommendation from a network, I was offered the opportunity to go contracting in London for Dixon's Carphone Warehouse. The business there was going through a massive merger process and almost was running two different organisations and trying to run them both at the same time. I worked in a technical delivery role for integrations and environments for an HR project to implement success factors. Again, the teams down there were excellent. A really complicated environment to work in, merging organisations, multiple data sources, multiple processes, but all in all, it was a great experience. And then I got a call back from Morrison's, who were about to embark on a major HR and digital transformation programme. It was probably the largest of its kind in Europe at the time, and I was given the opportunity to lead this from a technology perspective from start to finish. And really, these opportunities, they don't come around that often, so I had to jump at the chance. So what we were doing, it was a multi-million-pound programme over several years to replace HR, payroll, time and attendance, and scheduling systems. The transformation would ultimately affect and impact over 120,000 colleagues. It was the largest in Europe at the time. There was digital transformation of hundreds of paper-based processes. So just one example of that, in stores previously, a colleague would have to fill in a paper-based form, walk that form up to the people office. In the people office, a people clerk would key that information into a system. The system would then calculate if there was any holiday left to be able to take for that colleague, and that paper-based trail would then go back onto the shop floor on the colleague. That happens, you know, for 120,000 people. You can imagine the savings this type of project will be able to do by digitalising all that workflow and all that process. There was also an amazing opportunity to optimise scheduling and release a massive amount of productivity benefits. So by using intelligent data and data points from transactions and store and sales, we were able to configure a system that could automatically predict what your schedule should be five weeks out in advance, making, you know, saving stores hours and hours and thousands of hours of time creating these manual schedules. This was all automated. This was all information that was put back into the colleague's hand, and again, accessible from anywhere. So a massive step forward on a digital transformation journey. It also gave the opportunity to have to maintain a legal and compliant payroll service. By moving into the cloud, we're able now to maintain that legislation. So every time the government wants to make a new payroll rule, we make sure that that's compliant with legislation in the system. Digitalisation of hundreds of workflows, reducing handover points and friction within the organisation, and also delivering improved data and building real analytical and insight capabilities, building the backbone and the foundations to be able to progress really important executive dashboards so that you can sort of make decisions around the organisation, critical into what we were delivering there. So how did we go about it? The solution itself was built on Oracle's cloud for HR and payroll, also Absence and HR help desk in terms of our incident tracking system. Moving into cloud technologies, which was a good step, moving all that HR data into the cloud, massive amount of exercise to be able to do that. At the same time, also implemented a SaaS product for from a company called Reflexis, which is a time, attendance and scheduling organisation. And we also built a greenfield integration layer built on AWS and GCP architecture, but building a microservices architecture to enable integrations and applications to be able to consume data in the future. We replaced over 50 integrations at the time, which were all legacy point-to-point, file point-to-point, really cumbersome integrations. This, as I say, moving everything from an in-house data center into the cloud, and the amount of data that was transformed there, a massive amount of effort went into that, and a successful outcome. And a bit about the program delivery elements of it. So my role was as the program manager. I led 8 different work streams within that delivery. multiple suppliers, multiple teams from Morrison's technology, multiple teams from people and finance, and some key contractors to fill the gaps. I think at the height of the program, we had over 200 resources working on the delivery. So real enterprise scale, massive programming work. In some of the key things in the control that I wanted to call out on that, I've highlighted here. So a bit about whilst we have program governance and that end-to-end program governance and control, which is really important, gave each work stream a level of autonomy to self-organise, but also made sure that they reported back into that program governance for overall control. There were multiple suppliers involved in this, and it was really challenging to make sure that they were all aligned, and that key sort of building that ecosystem of how work flows between teams and suppliers and organisation and handover points is really, really important. So we invested heavily in Confluence and in Jira, and make sure that everything was real-time updates to try and speed up time. Things go wrong, and it's about how you react and reacting well. I remember very early in the implementation, probably 4 months into the implementation, a supplier came to me and said, "We're 6 months behind." So then, in my mind, we had almost like a time machine. We had almost travelled back in time. So this supplier was in effect telling me that if we had done nothing, we would have been in a better position than when we were investing 4 months into that organisation. So that was all about how we reacted to that situation, replanning, organisation, stepping forward, moving forward. Building the team around me was very key and critical, and never stopped in the duration and the life cycle of the project. Making sure we have the key individuals who are not only skilled in their role, but also the right characters to be able to move forward the delivery. Test. So, when you're dealing with something as complex as HR and payroll calculations are super important. Nobody likes to be paid wrong. So testing is critical in these deliveries, and also getting to a pilot as quickly as possible. Taking the learnings from a pilot, taking from what you learn, and then moving on and continuing that implementation. Plan and communicate is so important when you've got so many different people working on outcomes, that you are really clear on what the plan is, that you hold regular updates, and you communicate appropriately to the level of the audience that you're working with. And really, from my experience, it's really important to use your steering group. For this delivery, we had some senior executive sponsors on the steering group. We had, group HR directors, group IT directors, group finance directors, and actually by educating them and providing them the right information, one, they can support you by making key decisions, but two, they can also help within the wider organisation to cut through things, because you need to protect your delivery, and your delivery is so important. And then adapt the delivery to whatever the problem at the time. So for the majority of the program, we held governance around the waterfall model, but certainly after we got into pilot for the first stores, the 3 work streams around sort of core work streams around core HR, payroll, time and attendance, moved that into more of a product ways of working, so that we were working off a backlog of features that were prioritised by the business stakeholder or the product owner, to make sure that with the time that we had available, we were delivering the most value for the organisation at the time. And that was really key. And I think it's always good to, keep reflecting on your delivery, keep trying to improve it, never stop striving for improvement as you move forward through things, and learn as you go. Try not to repeat the same mistakes that you did previously. And then I suppose my advice, this is Beans here. He's a solid worker at times. So my advice to you in developing your career and what's important to you, so be yourself, back who you are, trust in your individuality and what you as a person can bring to any role. Listen to your team. You will never ever have all the answers. You will never ever be the best at everything. So build that team, listen to your team, and react to that. Understand your strengths, your skills, and your weaknesses. So by understanding your strengths, your skills, you can overplay them and you can develop them more. By understanding your weaknesses, you can build a team around you to help mitigate those weaknesses and build as a collective rather than as an individual. I've got in here walk the dog. I don't literally mean go out there and buy a dog and start walking the dog if you don't like dogs. I, for one, really do like dogs. But what I mean here is, you know, take a bit of time to yourself, make sure you build in breaks, and take that time, take that mind space, think, reflect, detach, and don't work all the time. As I previously said, over communicate. Everybody just needs to, if everybody has the update and it's consistent and it's clear, people will feel more in control, especially if things do go wrong. And you know, shit does go wrong. It's how you react that counts, and it's how about you react in a situation, how you step back from the pressure, and how you lead forward from that. If you are in a really complex situation or you're trying to solve a problem that seems enormous, don't overthink it or don't be too scared. Just start. You will learn along the way, and starting is sometimes the most challenging things. And then finally, as I've said to you before, take that time to learn new things, listen to people, take on board what they've got to say, make sure you allocate time for yourself, for learnings, for training, for courses, and really develop on who you are as a person as well as your technical skills. I hope that's been interesting for you. I would be keen to connect with anybody on LinkedIn, and if I can offer any advice into your career, please do reach out to me and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. Thank you so much for listening.
Fantastic, thank you, Peter. Now hang around for the Q&A in about 20 minutes time, Peter. There's plenty of questions coming in. In the meantime, Rebecca, grey skies and rainbows. I'll hand the screen to you, and the audience is yours. Fantastic. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you. And Pete, thanks very much for that presentation you did. The good news is I've actually got 120 slides in mind, so we'll all be good. So grey skies and rainbows. The grey skies will definitely become apparent in a minute. The rainbows is because it's Pride Month, and as a gay woman, it's a great month for me. A whole month just for me, in fact. So here we go. So this is a presentation really on a journey of work, career, and life happiness. And have I messed? Oh, how can I mess this up so early? There we go. Let me just try and get rid of that there. So on life learning. So here we go. So the whole thing is going to be between some quotes that I've got in my life, and also some lessons that I've learned. The first 6 will apply nicely to delivery, but all 8 really are, I think, about life lessons and career lessons. So I'm just going to have to get rid of that chat box down there, which will make my screen go like that. So there we go. So the sad news is I could code at the age of 8, which makes me probably quite geeky at the particular point in time. I worked with my dad to develop EPOS systems, and I'm probably a lot older than most people think. But as a child, I was fairly introverted, had a very sheltered and troubled childhood, and maybe that is because I was brought up in Hull, or as many people like to call it, hell. I also started working as 15 as an apprentice, and unlike Pete, I never went to university, and not even for a small period of time. I just haven't been, but I have progressed to doing an MBA. I've done quite a lot of roles, but also it's been over 30 years. I started off as a programmer, hence being able to code at 8. And my last permanent role was Director of Programs and IT for a really large European multi-billion organisation doing retail and distribution. But I probably enjoyed most of my jobs, not all of them, and we'll come on to that in a moment. So my first lesson is it's not all about technology. The further you go in your career, whether it's IT or digital technology or any other career, it's not about technology. It's all about the people. It's about delivery, it's about execution, it's about output, and it's about business organisation outcomes. So if you think it's about tech and you want to get a senior job in digital technology, forget it. You really have got to become less hands-on and more about focusing on the people. And fundamentally, it's not about what tech you deliver. It's about being able to keep up. Fundamentally, right now with the competition, we've seen that through the pandemic, should we say? You know, the people that are lagging behind literally just died. And our job as IT professionals, IT leaders, is to make sure that our businesses and organisations stay and survive and thrive. So a couple of quotes. So my first boss, a guy called Ian Barton Jones, who was a metallurgist when I worked for Rio Tinto Zinco, as it was at the time, said, always look after number one. And he said this because the organisation was closing down that particular plant, which is just near Hull. And that's my lesson too, which is change happens, get used to it. So people are made redundant every day, reorganisations happen all the time, and actually the kind of stuff I get involved with in my organisation is it's all about reorganisation, it's all about change, it's all about transformation. A lot of that is tech, and actually one of the things we have to get used to in tech is our job is literally to get people out of organisations. We're there to automate, we're there to put AI in, we're there to put new systems in, we're there to make things easier, and fundamentally that means people aren't needed to do that job anymore. And if we're not focused on doing that, we're probably not doing a great job. But what I would say is as change happens, it also gives opportunities to us to do more and to do better. So thinking of quotes from retailers, a competition obviously Morrison's is Tesco. So in one of my jobs, I was really thinking about I need to move on and do something else. So I actually found out the name of somebody who works in Tesco's. I can't remember, it was many years ago. And I rang them and I said, hey, I'm looking for a career, and what do I do? And he told me, be careful, you don't jump out the fire, the frying pan into the fire. So, and funny enough, that is exactly what I did do. I then went to work for an organisation in the city. And the one thing I learned from this was actually you need to get on with your boss. And this guy that I worked for, it was just a disaster. I just could not build a rapport with them. I just didn't agree with their technology strategy. So lesson 3, build relationships and be political. And many of you go, well, I don't want to be political. If you're not going to be political, don't get involved with leadership. You have to be political to some extent. You might not want to get involved with the politics, but you need to understand the politics at very least, and fundamentally build relationships, build rapport, make sure that you've got people that trust you and you can trust those people. And remember, people are key. It's not about technology, going back to lesson 1. I'll also say make sure you align yourself with the right people. Sometimes it's kind of quite hard to do that, especially certainly in that role. I really, really didn't believe in the strategy that they were going in. So another quote I got is, if you're not involved in social media, you just won't be considered. So I'm on social media. I think we probably all are on LinkedIn. You can definitely find me on LinkedIn, but things like Twitter, this was back in 2009, but I think Twitter must have been around then. And actually this was a really, really interesting job. It was for, well, when I say interesting, I'm really pleased I didn't get it, and I'm really pleased I wasn't that active on social media. So this job was working for Symbian, and if any remember Symbian, anyone old enough to remember Symbian, is the mobile OS that Nokia were doing, and of course we all know it's gone nowhere because obviously it's Google and it's iOS. So, but this was a job I never got because I wasn't on social media. So please make sure you get on social media to some extent, even if that's just LinkedIn, and please make sure that you use it. Which leads nicely onto lesson 4, build a network of people at work and of friends. And it's about making sure you've got connections. And again, LinkedIn's a great profile and a great way to do that. But also make sure you've got a great network of friends that understand you. And they could be friends from work, but just be really cautious of that. But also friends that are in work. So I've got a couple of great friends that work in tech, and I can have a whole conversation with them that they understand, and they can provide support, advice, and sometimes a shoulder to cry on. But really build that network of work people and work connections, and those friends that can support you. It might cross over. It's so important because they're the people you're going to have to draw on when you need that support and when you need that advice. Lesson 5, and this applies to pretty much everything. So create a plan, but fundamentally, if you want to move your career forward, you need to create a plan for where you want to be. And it never kind of goes from there to there. As we know, it always kind of has squiggly lines all over the place. But I would advise you on these things. Don't think you want to be an IT director if you want some kind of work-life balance. To get there, you need to be really experienced if you want that kind of work-life balance. Think about how much money that you want to be earning. Do your research. Don't think you want to do some job that maybe doesn't earn the money that you really want it to be. Think about where you want to live. And of course, it's all changed in the last 12 months. You know, I'm a firm believer remote working is absolutely something we should all do. But do I think everyone's going to be remote working in 2 years' time like we've been doing for the last 12 months? Absolutely not. Think about where you want to be living. Think about that commute, because it is coming back at some point. And certainly for those senior jobs, it's definitely going to be in the office for some of that time. Think about, do you have the right skills? Pete talked about getting Prince 2 qualifications. There's certainly some Scrum qualifications. There's some coding qualifications. There's a lot of qualifications around security right now. Think about, do you have the right skills for that job that you want to do? Not now, but maybe in 5 years, in 10 years. Remember, things change around you, and a career is rarely a straight line. So actually, right now, it's all hot around security. But actually, in 5, 6 years' time, it might be something else. It was certainly very hot around project delivery and program delivery 5 years ago, and I think that has transitioned to security more recently. And also, we can often get overly comfortable, and I think about probably 3 or 4 places in my career where I felt very comfortable. One of them was at Peter, where I was out many years ago, and I felt really comfortable there. And I left that organisation to go somewhere else where I didn't feel I could come out. But you know, we've got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and that opportunity to move on and find your next role. And in terms of delivery, project delivery, just in case of anything, there's this thing called Kotter's 8-step models, transformation and change. And the first item is my favourite, which is about creating a sense of urgency. And this could be a sense of urgency for that amazing transformation project at work, but it could be a sense of urgency about getting that new role, changing career, whatever it is, but creating that sense of urgency to make it important and urgent that you're actually going to start doing this. So lesson 6 is actually start to do something. And starting to do something is often the hardest thing, but you do need to start. You do need to move forward. And sometimes that could just be planning it. And actually just building a plan is actually a start, but of course then you've got to start doing the plan. But I really, really urge you to look at Kotter's 8-step model for change if you've not done. I really, really urge you not to run away from difficult problems and issues, but actually to start to do something about getting through it. And also, just one more thing on this is conflict isn't a bad thing. It's part of work and it's part of life. And actually conflict and diversity in organizations is really, really good for not only you, but also the organization. It brings in innovation, it brings in change, it brings in fresh ideas. So don't run away from conflict if that's what's putting you off from starting something. So the next 2 are really about life. And the first one is, I was told once, you can't have your cake and eat it, but I absolutely guarantee you, you can have your cake and eat it. Just this morning, I went to a cafe in central Manchester, went to a place called Home Sweet Home, and had the slice of cake that was probably as big as my face, and a coffee, and I ate it. So I can promise you can have your cake and eat it. And we can have that in life, and we can have that career in our careers too. So please don't think that is true. You absolutely can have your cake and eat it, and I absolutely urge you to do that. Lesson 6 in that case is all about acknowledging our privilege. White, middle-class woman, I have oodles of privilege, not as much as some of you, but just acknowledge your privilege. Just understand, you know, how did my background assist me in getting to my career? Have I got here through my own merits? But also, when you are there, am I being treated equally with all my peers? As a woman, I said, you know, where I've got paid less, and I went there and said, I want a pay rise, and I got one. Also, when you're in a position of privilege, make sure you challenge the inequality around you, and also when it impacts you. So, you know, maybe just spend a couple of seconds now thinking about actually, you know, could someone else with less privilege have got to do the job I want to do? But also maybe if you haven't got that privilege, you know, think about, you know, what challenges that might be to you. But also if you see someone with less privilege or see someone that might be struggling, help them, help them, help them. Probably one of my favourite quotes ever, and it probably just proves that I'm not a detail person with all the spelling mistakes that you've probably seen in my slide. Done is always better than perfect. And this is on a wall in a developer's office back in 2013. He was a web developer, and it was wonderful. Done is better than perfect. You know, you have to get things delivered, you have to get things done. And actually that applies to me too. So, you know, sort your own shit out. You know, you know, it's really, really important. You know, don't get in your own way. You know, if you've got challenges, I had a challenging childhood for all sorts of reasons. You know, get some professional help, get some counselling, get some mentors. You know, I've been married, divorced, you know, I've got a kid. You know, they're all parts of life and we have to get through them. So you've got to make sure you sort yourself out if you want to perform in your work life, let alone your home life. So, you know, establish open, honest, balanced relationships with your partner, with your friends, with your work colleagues. Find a way to be authentic. You know, I don't come out anymore. It's just who I am. Make sure you clear that runway, and it applies to work as well. Remove those obstacles out of the way, because then you can take off. And also develop some core principles, and I'll talk about some of my core principles in a few minutes. My favourite one, and I don't know if chat's open, but if anybody doesn't know what FRO stands for, this was a colleague in my 2012. We were sat in this board meeting and we talked about I think it was a supplier wanting to increase the price of something, and literally just went to me, Rebecca, they just need to FRO, and if anybody doesn't know what it means fuck right off. And it's so true. Sometimes that is exactly what people need to do. And in 2015, I founded Grey Blue Limited, which is the company that I work for now. I work for myself. I've got a small number of consultants that float in and float out all the time. And I really, really enjoy myself. From that last job I did, I asked to be made redundant. Don't know if I can do that technically, but I did. And I left and I started my own business. And I've never, ever looked back since. I've worked for some amazing organisations. I've worked for government, Ministry of Justice. I've worked for CIPD. I've done loads of amazing transformation projects. I've led digital and technology functions. It's just been immense fun since 2015. It was fun before, it's even more fun now. So just to recap on those 8 lessons, it's not about technology, it's all about people. Change happens, so get used to it. Building relationships and being political is really important. Even if you don't want to be political, you need to understand what the politics are going on around you. Build a network of people from work and friends. Get that support network in place. Create a plan for where you want to be. You know, maybe 5 years, maybe 1 year, but just create a plan on maybe how you're going to get there. Actually start to do something. Don't just think, I want a new job, I want a new career, or think about some project at work that you want to do. You've absolutely got to start something. And then think about your own privilege. Why are you there? Maybe why someone else is there and you're not. And the last one is sort yourself out. You know, if you've got challenges that you need to work through, do that. So my core principles, like I promised you, I let my own moral compass be my guide. So fundamentally, clients that I will not work with gambling people. I work with people that have addiction. So you'd never find me working for BAT. You also probably wouldn't find me working for many organisations, or any organisations that use child labour. The office next door to me here is a large online clothing retailer. I would just simply and have refused to work with them because of their ethics that they have previously employed. I would also say live where the work is. So if you think you're going to get a great career somewhere at a senior job, if you work in the middle of nowhere, you're probably not really going to get that job. You need to really kind of think about where you live and where you work, and that's one of those life balance things. Fundamentally, know your worth, follow the money, and only work with fun people, because money is important and it's not everything, but you do need to work with fun people. But if you know your worth, you'll know how much you should be getting paid, and you should ask for it. Enjoy what you do or don't do. So, you know, I have worked for people and organisations that I've not enjoyed, and I've said I'm only going to do this for so long, and I've left. But really try and find what you enjoy doing, and do it. Really important to me is to live, love, and work authentically. And if people can't take that, it's tough. Acknowledge my privilege, and I have lots. But fundamentally support and encourage others. and always pay it forward. Karma is a wonderful thing, so please, I encourage you to help other people. You know, when there are opportunities out there, say someone else's name that might be able to help you. Really, you know, the future is other people, it's not ourselves. Final slide, please find me on LinkedIn. That's my organisation, Grey Blue. I do CIO advisory, fractional IT and CTO and IT leadership, and coaching and mentoring. It'd be great to connect. I shall leave you back on these, but that's it, and I finished exactly on 80 minutes 34 seconds.
Perfect. Thank you, Rebecca. And that was absolutely fascinating and good, robust advice at the end, which should generate even more fabulous questions. Welcome back, Peter. Do please put any questions that you have, any additional questions. We have quite a few to go at, onto the chat box on your GoToWebinar toolbar. And I've been making a note of some of the questions already. Now, there's one that came in just a moment ago, Rebecca, and it's we did invite people to challenge our speakers in our invitations, and this one probably does. Do you ever find that being political means that you're not authentic? Reconcile these! Exclamation mark.
No, I think you can do both quite happily. So for me, I think I was really careful in saying, if you're not political, be aware of the politics. And actually, I think sometimes you tread a fine line, but I think you have to be political, or at least you have to acknowledge the politics exist. If you don't, I don't think you're probably, doing yourself justice.
Well, it's interesting that somebody else has latched onto the political thing as well. They ask you to enlarge on what being political actually looks like.
Well, okay, so I think the higher you get in your career and the people that you work with, I think there are always personal agendas that are going on, and I think you need to be consciously aware of them. I think it's about making sure that you are well informed, and I'm not going to say use that information, but you are conscious of how and when you use that information. We all know people have their own agendas. I also, where I can, call it out. I'm really lucky that, when I work in a position where I'm there as a consultant, you can be maybe less political, but I think it's important that you call out when people have got a personal agenda, with as much confidence as you can. I think one of the things I've got, as I've got older, is I've got a lot more confidence about calling out when I think someone's got a different agenda. And certainly if you're leading a project or a program, there's ways of bringing that in board meetings or in meetings. I think you can do that to some extent. It's a great question to challenge. I think you can do it authentically, was the first question, and I think you have a duty to do it as well.
Yeah, and I think it's about understanding the environment that you're working in, and by understanding exactly what's going on there, you'll probably be able to perform a little bit better. You'll be able to navigate through the organisation, navigate through the departments, other people, and it's just another element that you need to be aware of, right? Self-awareness, being able to see what's going on, and be able to tap into that. It's really important.
There is that wonderful quote somewhere: "Get involved with politics or get ruled by your inferiors," I think, but
Okay, Peter, there's some questions around your the development of your leadership skills, and putting a couple together. You've plainly led what were complex projects populated by lots of different people with different agendas, certainly different skill sets. What were the key personal qualities that you found you had to develop as you moved into that sort of leadership role?
Yeah, absolutely. So the key things that I've sort of identified over the time that I'm in my career, I've got two real strengths that I like to play on. One is I'm described as being an achiever. So in a delivery role, I like to do things. I like to-do lists. I like lists. I like to drive teams. I like to be able to get things done. So any sort of a task that has to be get done, we talk about planning and we talk about tasks and we talk about actions. I am a firm believer that if anything can be done today, let's get it done. And actually, if you do that across the course and the life cycle of a project, when you're working with many different teams, you'll end up shortening your timescales for delivery. And the second one, I think, is I'm a maximizer. I'm described as a maximizer, so I like to get the best out of the teams that I have, and to be able to build that sort of breadth of skills. I'm a good listener. I've developed. I wouldn't say originally I was a very good listener, but over the course of my career, I have become a good listener, and I think that's a lot between sort of the learnings that I went through from recruitment. You know, I used to probe and ask questions and things, and pulling together the bigger picture, and that's what I've tried to take forward. And that breadth, you know, I listen to teams. I believe that the team will deliver much more than what I will. And then once you build that strong team, it's all about being that leader, so that you can just sort of guide them. You can coach, you can guide, you can be that escalation point. You can be 5 steps ahead of the delivery team, really removing all the blockers as you move along. And actually, that's what the team will start to sort of. The specialist can do the job. I'm just sort of almost like trying to orchestrate it or conduct it as we move forward, really. And that's the sort of leadership skills that you start having. You sort of get experience of that on a smaller project, and then you just grow it and you grow it and you grow it, and then the larger, the more complex programs just comes into its own, really.
Rebecca, leadership training, have you done any?
Yeah, I have. I did a certificate in management, but well, to be fair, let me qualify. I've done stuff in management. I've done nothing in leadership, and actually, all my leadership skills I've got from watching people, more fundamentally bad leaders, rather than good. To be fair, there have been some good leaders, but actually, I've learned a lot from the people that haven't led well. Do I think leadership training is good? I think there's definitely some merit to do MBAs, but I think that's you know, a broader business thing. I think there's lots of great learning on leaders, but I think just watch people, see good leaders, learn from them, see bad leaders, learn from them.
So actually that links nicely to another question for you, Peter. How much of your achievement in what you've described has been human as distinct from technical, referencing really Rebecca's point as well?
Well, loads of it, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the technology is one thing, and then the technology. So there are other retail organisations who have selected similar technologies to what happened at Morrison's. Their programs have run longer. Their programs are still running. The achievements that were delivered from Morrison's are because of the people who work there, and the control and the effort and the commitment from the teams to be able to get that over the line. Not the technologies. Technologies just there to be configured or developed or implemented. People, process, change, communication. That's the stuff that stands out. Resilience, you know. But yeah, absolutely, it's the people that make the difference.
Do you endorse that, Rebecca?
Absolutely. I think you can give someone the worst system, that, you know, and implement that, but with the right people, they'll make it work. Whereas you can give someone the best technology, but the wrong people, there's no way it'll work. I've seen that countless times.
And I mean, I think that's where you get in every single sales pitch. You know, if you're involved in, you know, product selection, the salesman will come and tell you everything about what the product can do, but it's about the people who can put in that product, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, continuing this focus on people, and a lot of our audience will be coming to understand that a lot of IT leadership is on all fours with leadership generally being a people-focused thing. One of our questioners wants to know what you actually do to build relationships, to build trust.
Although it's
the
just
nuts and bolts.
Someone from the team had dialed in there and asking what I did there. So look, I'm all about building sort of shared goals and shared ownership. So an example would be, so I lead a team of sort of 17 permanent colleagues at the moment. They're technology colleagues. They are supported by 40 supplier resources that I have in the team as well. And we work in partnership with a business team. And the business team, we've now split the business teams and the technology teams into product areas. So if you are looking after a set of products that support, say payroll or time and attendance, the whole sort of cross-functional team in the organisation between sort of HR, payroll, business HR teams, finance teams, and technology teams they're all trying to work together to deliver an outcome. And the part of the leadership role there is actually trying to coach the team to say, okay, well, you can self-organize your work, but talk to me about what is the shared outcome or the shared goals, rather than breaking it down to say, okay, well, I'm going to do this over in the business, I'm going to do this over in technology, and there's going to be a big friction point in between. And it's all about, having one plan, one set of deliverables, one set of shared outcomes, one set of goals, and actually everybody's trying to deliver a new feature for the end customer or the end colleague who actually we want to improve something for. And that's all about that type of coaching behavior, having things much more visual now. So there's a lot more use of boards and sprint boards and Kanban boards and visual representation of the work that we're doing, making sure that if you are using like a tracking system for your work, that everybody can access it any time, and there's not sort of big email chains going back and forward. It's all about instant visibility of the action. We know who's got the latest task on that, or we know who's managing the next piece of work, and it's about breaking down those handover points.
So John, I think the question was a question about trust, wasn't it? So,
yes.
So for me, I think the first question was, how could it be authentic and be political? I think it is. We talk about authentic leadership now, and I think it is about being authentic. And being out as a gay woman, that's me being authentic. I'm taking my whole self to work. I'm talking about it. I'm talking about my girlfriend. I'm talking about living together, all that kind of stuff. So being authentic. I talk about authentic experiences at work, authentic things I've done. So I think, as well as being authentic, it's about being a role model. So I think it's really important that you model the behaviour that you want to see. So it is about, as Pete said, role model listening to people, role model supporting people, role model encouraging people, and that happens top down. So I think authentic leadership with role modelling, and then communicate. Pete talks about communicating in terms of setting goals, but just communicate what we're doing, why we're doing it. And I think with those, that's where you build the trust. And of course, fundamentally, you've got to deliver. But I think those role modeling, authentic leadership, communicating, delivery, I think I'm not saying will happen naturally, but I think there's a much better chance of it will happen.
Well, thank you for that. Here's a different one for you, Rebecca. You seem very focused. Have you ever benefited from happy chance in your career?
What do they say? They say luck is when hard work and opportunity come together. Have I benefited from happy chance? I've certainly benefited from having people in my network that give me opportunities, for sure. You could also argue that privilege is happy chance. I mean, I can certainly benefit from my dad used to teach, computing as it was then when I was growing up. That was probably happy chance. And, if that's happy chance, and it's probably, having my dad been asked, teach me to code when I was 8. I mean, that's probably it. And I only had a job in technology, in computing, in IT, in digital technology. That's all I've done. So maybe that's the happy chance that I had.
I think the happy chance is that you understood it when you were 8, perhaps.
Well, certainly probably more so then than now. Sure.
Peter, same question to you. It's a good question to ask you as well. Happy chance or plan?
I think so. I think it's probably a happy chance that I'm here today. I met one of your consultants on a stag do randomly many years ago, and he invited me to talk today. So I don't think I would be presenting if that didn't come up. But yeah, certainly in your career days, you've got to sort of take those chances when they come up, I think. And absolutely right. My transition into technology was because of the client that I was working with at the time from recruitment. So yeah, I certainly believe that there is that happy chance element of it. But it's about having your eyes open to that opportunity and taking those chances, really.
Can you get behind Rebecca's very neat and apt definition of luck?
Yeah, I think so.
Can I just interject? And I don't know how many women are on this other than me, but you talked about a stag do, and not many women go on stag do. So actually, you talk about privilege. Male privilege. Women don't go on stag do's. Women don't have the opportunity to network. So I would say privilege is really, really important as part of this as well. And actually, happy chance. We just need to think about other privileges that people do and don't have, and maybe how we can help people that are less privileged to have those opportunities and those happy chances too.
Yeah, and I think again, having that being that authentic, other people will have other opportunities, and yeah, absolutely. It's about inclusion more than anything.
Here's a more challenging one. Again for you, Rebecca. We're being asked, have you ever challenged inequality around you, as you were saying you have, and suffered as a result?
Probably. I've certainly suffered homophobia, and I didn't challenge it. I was in my mid-20s. I definitely suffered that in an organisation where I was out. So I didn't challenge it then, and probably as a result of that, I suffered. Certainly, I can't imagine anything in the last 15 years knowingly suffered, only benefited from challenging and calling out. And I really hope the people that I called out are slightly more aware about their views and thoughts and things than they were before.
Peter, have you encountered that situation?
I can't say that I have, to be honest with you, but I think that certainly I've worked with some really, people, leaders, executives who have had inclusion and diversity on their agenda. So I think I've again probably benefited from being able to work closely with them, and that just being on the people agenda now. I think organisations, there's still a whole load that everybody and individuals need to do, but I'm seeing more organisations take things like this more seriously, and I think it's absolutely right, especially in a reflection of our society, right? But yeah, it's so important that we appreciate that everybody should be involved.
Have you ever encountered a situation where you simply found that you couldn't do the job, you weren't up to it, and how did you deal with it? Did you talk to yourself about it? Did you address your own capabilities with yourself, Peter?
Have I ever felt that I've not been able to do the job? No, I would just go and build someone into the team and bring that strength back in, right? I think it's not any sort of deliverables and anything you achieve in life. Within that, I believe that it's not about the individual. I believe that you're stronger as a team. So, celebrate that you can't do it. Take it as a learning. Try and learn in the future. But if it's a work situation, build around it. Is my advice anyway.
Rebecca, you're nodding in agreement.
So I'm definitely nodding. There were definitely times in my 20s, and those 8 lessons were 30 years of lessons. Let's be really clear. If I'd only let them in the first year of my career, that would have been amazing. But certainly in my mid-20s, there was a telephony system going in, and I was way out of my depth, and I totally messed it up. Totally, literally messed it up. It was 2 months delayed, and it's all because I didn't admit that I didn't know what I was doing. And I did learn from that. I learned not to run away from my mistakes, which maybe should have been lesson 9.
Do you mean didn't admit to yourself?
I didn't admit to myself. It was like, we're going to do this. Come on, happy clappy stuff. And I totally and utterly messed it up. Thankfully, it's sorry.
How did you address it? How did you get out of that?
I don't even think listen, we're talking about a long time ago, so I just know that it's coming back to me now in my gut. It's just like I know exactly how I felt. It's like, oh my god, I'm way out of my depth. I think I went on holiday, and as I would do, and came back to an almighty mess. I didn't lose my job, thankfully, and I think I just let time fix it. I think that's another great quote, isn't it? Just let, time heals everything. So it's one of those. It was 20 years ago. I certainly wouldn't, desperately try not to get in those situations again, for sure.
It's interesting that we're addressing this, though, because, of course, the audience are listening to with a view to aspiring to your position. They may well be you 20 years ago, but right now.
Oh, well, to be fair, the tech wasn't in the cloud bed, literally. The technology has changed too. So let me try and give some advice. So what I would have done should I have known is literally just admit I'm out of my depth in that particular thing. I think me and Pete are probably in positions where we can hire people in that can help fix our problems. But I think if you're in knee deep in shit, admit you are and let someone get you out. And maybe there'll be Pete or maybe there'll be me, another colleague that will help you out, because people want you to succeed. Yeah. So just admit you're out of your depth and ask for some help.
I think if you go back to that, you know, making sure that you have a leader or a boss that you work with, that you have that trust relationship with. If anybody in my team came to me and said that they were struggling with something, I wouldn't let them fail. I wouldn't turn my back and say, go away, and then just work through that shit that you've got and then it's not going to work. Absolutely not. And I think it's about identifying that and building that in your career and feeling confident to speak up. Don't be afraid to speak up and ask for help. Certainly not. And you will get it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sound advice. Thank you very much indeed. We've reached 7 o'clock. So thank you, Tom. Thank you, Rebecca. You've taken us on what has actually been a fascinating journey through really quite amazing experiences and given us all some really substantial food for thought besides. We'll share the recording of this session in the next day or two. And when you close this session, and again in an hour's time, you'll receive an invitation to complete a very quick survey to tell us how you found it today and how we can make these sessions even better. We would really value your input to that. But in the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed this session. Thank you for being here. Thank you to Peter Griffiths and Rebecca Fox, and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.